His wife is Welsh. I don't speak pure Welsh, okay? But
it's going to be probably 40 minutes. I've left quite a lot of time for questions. And I was also thinking as I talked, I'd be happy to just solicit questions as they come up to make it a bit more conversational. Yeah.
Is that what we'll do is we'll just have the cameras on your slides, and then when it comes to Q&A, we do a little backwards and forwards thing.
Okay.
If you want to talk to people, that's fine, but we'll just leave them on the slide.
Yeah, sure.
But you reckon about 40-45 minutes? And then
Yeah, bang on. Yeah. Yeah, I think that works great. Do you have a microphone for the audience, or should I repeat the question? Okay.
So that still goes on.
All right, good. Yeah, that's good. No worries.
Transmission, is it better if I send it per Right, yeah. I think so. Okay. No.
I think that's circa 1970.
Jim.
You happy it's all going to work, Jerome?
I think so, yeah. It seems like the setup's... I think my only concern is that the audio might not work on some of these slides. So the later ones, there is one particular demo which is very much reliant on the audio. Yeah. Can I just try with the microphone? See if I'm holding that to...
The buses aren't the problem, they actually provide a solution. The buses aren't the problem, they actually provide a solution.
Do you want a mic as well? Is that
I think, hold on, I think that is actually...
The buses aren't...
No, it just took a minute to load, yeah, so you don't need the mic. But that's fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
For some reason there's a 3-second or 2 or 3 second delay
Right.
on some presentations.
Yeah.
So we can continue.
It works. Yeah, I've got time. Thank you very much as well, Lisa.
By yourself? Is there a Mrs. Wynne?
I've not known Mrs. Wynne, unfortunately. Yes, yeah. Tried several times to get to Mrs. Wynne, but not quite there. Okay. Happily...
Bridge is probably much easier to pick up stuff.
I think so, it's more clear for sure. Gonna get a picture. Let's get a picture of you two. Very nice. I was actually looking at it previously. I'm curious to know the history of the building as well. Was it originally built for the institution? Because it was formed 1839, was it? Yeah. Oh. That's
This is a second sort of generation sort of mathematics establishments.
Right.
The first ones were called philosophical institutions.
Oh, so they came in waves, did they? Right. Yeah.
Highgate is also
Right. I think I knocked, so I stepped backwards and I knocked the cable, and I'm not sure if I knocked it out. I'm going to step. Yeah, I think it was the ones down there that I kicked very gently. Oh, perfect. Okay, great.
I told you she was magic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming out on such a terrible night to come along to the science group of the Highgate Literary and Scientific Institution. I'm always delighted to come to these meetings because the intelligence of science, the innate intelligence, shines out from the audience and from its questions. And tonight, of course, to counterbalance that, we're going to have artificial intelligence. But before we get there, I have to cover the third degree, which is known as bureaucratic intelligence or nanny state intelligence. And I'm enjoying to tell you that the exits are quite numerous to the building. You may have noticed in coming in that through the doorway you could turn around and go back out that way. So that's one exit. There are another exits if you go through the door which says no exit. Past the kitchen you find the second exit. And then at the end of the room you turn right, past down the steps, you find yet a third exit. Through the third exit is also one of the lavatories. Now, we would also only use these exits in emergency circumstances. And if the emergency was really so exciting, you might not need the lavatory at all. But however, even if you're embarrassed about it, you have to come right round the building and assemble in the front of the building to be ticked off the various lists. I'm going to skip the introduction to asteroid strikes and attacks by Islamist and extreme right-wing telegraph readers. So we'll head straight on from that to tonight's subject of artificial intelligence. Looking around at the audience, I see that, like me, you've lived pretty much through the computer revolution. And the first operational computer I worked with was the computer on the Vulcan B2, which sat underneath my feet as I flew the airplane. And that was the last generation of analog computers. And it had all sorts of interesting technical gadgets in it, including things like square rooting pinwheels. But what it was really there for was for triangle solving. And the triangles were represented by metal tapes whirring around. The triangle they needed to solve was the triangle formed by the position of the Vulcan, the spot on the Earth directly underneath it, and the target. And of course, as the target got closer and closer, the triangle became smaller and smaller. And when the distance to the target equaled the calculated forward throw of the weapon, the computer released the bomb automatically. While you were living happily under Edward Heath and Wilson, the nuclear forces were in the hands of computers. But of course, we were concerned about safety at the time. And although I thought as a 24-year-old I was reasonably experienced and stable enough to be flying these missions, it was not only me, but also another crew member who had devices to interrupt the release of the bomb ejection mechanism. I could have skipped 50 years. And you will probably have noticed in the papers the other day, there were articles about the fact that the Ukrainians are going to have squadrons of F-16s operational against the Russians by July. Now, the Ukrainians can't fly F-16s. Nor can the Dutch, nor can the Danes, nor indeed can the Americans. The only things that fly F-16s are computers. And the F-16 as a fighter is engineered to be unstable. And the instability is such that no human pilot can counteract it in flight. If you lose electricity, if you lose power on an F-16, you have no choice but to eject. And it is a triplex system. So the problem when they were designing the F-16 was if it was all three computing systems were designed by the same house, same facility, you might have a bug in one which was the same as the second and the same as the third. So they divided out the programming task amongst 3 American software houses dotted around the country so that they couldn't actually talk to each other or compare notes as to how they did it. And that's how they were reasonably sure that the F-16 was safe. Now, we've now got to the position with artificial intelligence where the computers can work for themselves. If you read Robert Harris's book on computing and where the machine which is bought by a company to forecast the movement of stocks runs amok, and they can't get rid of it because what it's done in its spare time is build another building with computing machines on which its own software is stored. That's one of the reasons why we have to take computing, artificial intelligence, safety very seriously. As T.S. Eliot put it, what is the wisdom that we have lost through knowledge? What is the knowledge that we've lost through information? I can't answer Eliot's questions, but fortunately tonight we have someone who will be able to. Jerome Wynne has worked for the government as a data expert on various projects and is a member of the UK's Artificial Intelligence Safety Institute. There are currently, so he tells me, only 2 artificial intelligence safety institutes. But there are other nations who are working on it as well. And the problems which they are concerned with really have an international scale. And I think I probably said quite enough. Jerome, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jim. Hello, everyone. I have to be... Thank you. I have to be completely honest. When Jim started talking about bureaucratic intelligence, I was lining myself up to be... Well, I thought he was lining me up to be roasted. And so I was quite relieved when it turned out that wasn't the case. So I will be giving you one of wisdom, knowledge, or information this evening. It's up to you which one it is. I will do my best to make it wisdom. Maybe it will be information. Maybe it will be knowledge. So a bit about me first. Jim, you gave me a bit of an introduction, but my name's Jerome. It's wonderful to meet all of you. I think the projector does this every now and again. I'm hoping it will come back. I currently work at the UK government's AI Safety Institute. It's the largest and first government-backed institute of its kind, dedicated to AI safety for the public interest. Previously to joining AISI, the AI Safety Institute, I worked for 5 years as a data scientist, building machine learning systems for national security clients. And before that, my background academically was in mathematical statistics and machine learning. So outside of work, I don't have a life. I'm still interested in AI. I write a weekly newsletter that summarizes developments of technological, commercial, political, and social nature. And I post that each week. It's very good to meet all of you, and thank you, Jim, for inviting me to talk. So my talk this evening is themed around a wild idea, which is that transformative artificial intelligence will change the world in the next 10 years. What do I mean by this? I mean a 30% year-on-year increase in global world product. And to give you a flavor for the kind of scale of that, the last 10 years have usually seen between 2 and 5% growth in global world product year on year. And on a more practical level, what that could look like is that many occupations of today, so teacher, administrator, manager, graphic designer, journalist, will be largely or entirely automated. And alongside this, we would likely also see great social, cultural, political, and other technological change. So big idea, very dramatic, in just 10 years. I actually think that this is an audience that probably lends more credence to this idea because you've witnessed the computer revolution over the course of the last 90 years, and it has just been 90 years that we've gone from Turing and Alonzo Church's early papers on computer science all the way through to the modern internet and mobile computing. So, big idea, transformative artificial intelligence within the next 10 years. First, let's take a step back. What do I mean when I say AI, artificial intelligence? I mean software and computers that possess capabilities associated with intelligence. So this is multifaceted. It's learning, perception, reasoning, and planning. I think 4 pillars that pretty well capture it. Other definitions include, you know it when you see it. I'm not so keen on that one because I find it more difficult to work with. The argument I'm going to make this evening is going to be exclusively one-sided, and it's going to explore reasons that we might really see this explosive change in the next 10 years. So unashamedly one-sided. There are 2 major thrusts to the argument I'm going to make. One is rooted in a feedback cycle, a positive feedback loop between increases in AI capability and increases in venture capital and investment that get loaded into the companies building the artificial intelligence. So you see a shift in capability, investors get more excited, they pile more money into AI, that additional money unlocks further advances in capability. That's thrust 1 of the argument in favor. Thrust 2 of the argument in favor of transformative AI within the next 10 years is that self-improving AI seems like it may be within reach. And that really comes down to the fact that the current technical approaches to building AI and operating AI systems seem far from exhausted, and then there are very obvious ways to improve on current systems if you have hundreds of millions of dollars, which I don't. So those are the 2 main thrusts. I'm going to be putting the point on both of these thrusts, the one about the feedback loop between investment and capability, and the one about we're nearly at self-improving AI, essentially by giving you a guided tour of current capabilities and rewinding a little bit to 4 to 5 years ago to show you just how quickly capabilities are improving. And in somewhat of a gimmick, I have called this talk Gazing at the Capability Ceiling, or Gazing at the Ceiling, in reference to the fact that what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at the absolute state-of-the-art capability in AI now and in the immediate past to get a sense of how quickly things are changing. I should note that I'm not going to talk about how these systems work, but perhaps in our esteemed audience, there will be questions about how they do work. I'd be very happy to talk about that in the Q&A at the end. Okay, current capability of AI systems. I've got 4 case studies. They're quite different to each other. One is on writing and visual understanding. Second is on speech. Third on video generation. And the 4th on image generation. And it's going to be a side-by-side comparison. So you're going to see a system from 4 or 5 years ago, or even just 2 years ago, first, and then you're going to see a system from 2024 or late 2023. And the dramatic purpose this serves is to show how quickly AI capabilities are advancing, how quickly that capability ceiling is rising up above us. So the first on the roster is a system called GPT-2. It's on the screen here. I've got a little demo. So what is GPT-2? Well, it's an AI model that was developed by OpenAI and released in 2019. It's a large language model, if you come across that term. And what that means is that it generates text based on an initial starter line of text. And you'll see what I mean when I run the demo. Excuse me. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing me start from an initial prompt, an initial line of text. And what it says is, user, how to get from King's Cross to Angel, and then it cues the assistant, which will auto-complete, if you like, the text that's already there. So ideally, if this were really functional software, it would give me a good description of how to get to King's Cross, how to get from King's Cross to Angel. Wait for the model to load. And so one of the interesting things about the backstory of this system, this model, is that OpenAI openly released the technical details of how they built it and how they trained it. And that is very different, as you will see, to the systems that we have today, which are so commercially valuable. The very best ones, their technical details aren't published in scientific papers in any great detail. What you'll have is you'll have results showing performance of these systems, but not the nitty-gritty of this is actually how we did it. And that really points to the fact that in the time between 2019 and 2023, these systems have just become like wildly more commercially valuable. The big tech companies that are building them, the really well-funded tech startups, don't want to share their secrets. So going back to the demo, it's answering the question reasonably well. As an AI language model, I don't have access to real-time information or schedules. However, here are some general tips on getting from King's Cross Station to Angel. Take the tube, ride a bike, use public transportation, travel by train. And these models weren't really good enough to build commercial software on. They were essentially impressive tech demos. And even the context in which I'm showing you this demo somewhat points to that. This is not really, well, this isn't a consumer product I'm showing you. This is an interface to working with these models that is what I'd call a bit more hobbyist. And also the quality of the answer is not particularly, it's not bad, but it's not great. The model doesn't know quite when to stop, so it just keeps on going. And what you also found with these systems is that it would repeat itself, which admittedly I'm also guilty of, because I forget. And so it would say, item 1, oh, you could take the train. And then item 4, you could take the train. And then item 7, you could take the train, and so on. So 2019, systems, like, they were writing fairly fluent text, but they weren't useful enough to feature in commercial products. Let's forward wind to today, 2024. This second demo is another chatbot, another AI model that's capable of writing, called Claude Opus, developed by American startup Anthropic. Just a forewarning, you're going to be hearing a lot of American tech company, American startup, and we're going to come back to that later. Let's learn about Claude. Claude is a chatbot. It not only is capable of having term-based conversations, textual conversations, but it can receive images in its upload, and it's got visual understanding skills. And so what you're seeing in this demo is I say hello, the model responds. I say I'd like you to describe an image to me. It says, of course, I'd love to help. I then upload the image. I upload an image of my house. And I ask it a question about it. So I say, what is the color of the front doors in this photo? It takes a second to think about it, and it responds. And let's see what it says. So I'm just going to pause the video here so I can read out what it's saying. The image shows a row of townhouses or apartments in London. The buildings are made of brick and have white window frames and trim. Several cars are parked along the street in front of the buildings, including a red Volkswagen and some silver/grey cars. So that is largely correct. It is, they are townhouses, they are made out of bricks, they do have white window frames. There is a minor detail that is mistaken. It says red Volkswagen, but it's actually black. And there certainly are silver and grey cars out the front of the building. So what this demo, what I'm trying to demonstrate with this demo is that visual understanding has improved enormously over the last 4 years. This level of coherence legibility simply didn't exist in visual understanding 4 years ago. And in answer to the question I actually asked, it says, the front doors of the buildings are painted dark green, which provides a nice contrast against the lighter brick facade. So that's not quite right. I'm not sure if you can see it clearly on the slide, but one of the doors is dark blue and one of them is dark green. let's continue. So I talk a bit more to the model. And I should also mention that this is quite an esoteric question that I'm asking it. I'm presenting it with a novel image. I'm asking it a fairly novel question, and it's giving me a reasonably coherent response. And these systems, this single system is capable of answering questions that are as broad as the knowledge of the web itself. You could talk to it about the Highgate Literary and Scientific Institution if you wanted to. You could talk to it about your own hobby or research. And it would give you very high quality dialogue. And also dialogue that is coherent over many turns being taken as well. So that's a big difference to the systems that we had 4 or 5 years ago. The memory of the system is just much better now. It can remember what you said, say, 20 turns ago in the conversation and then loop it back in. And so in this, oh, that's not right. I continue talking to the system. I ask it about some details of, I think, what the price of the property is and what architectural style it follows. It gives me an answer saying Georgian style. It explains to me some details about what Georgian style means. It also gives me a fairly credible estimate of what the property's value probably is. Oh, and then at the end I ask, can you say that all again in Korean? So machine translation has gotten vastly better in the last few years. And this is the same. This isn't a dedicated translation system either. This is just a system that's designed to generate text, and yet it can do translation. Cool. And I also note that, I also would like you to know that what this demo shows is a commercial system, not a tech demo from a lab. And this is one of the really exciting things about AI at the moment, which is that the state of the art is demonstrated in commercial products. That's how it's shown to the world. Or in tech demos that are later followed just a few short months later by a commercial product. And that's, again, very different to 4 or 5 years ago, where you had a tech demo and you probably wouldn't hear about it again. It certainly wouldn't be a tech demo in a commercial product. It would be a tech demo from a research group in a university or even from one of the big tech companies. But it wouldn't be in a product. It wouldn't be accessible to the general public. Okay, I'm just going to take a drink of water. Great, so that's our first case study, writing and visual understanding. It's looking pretty capable. Like I say, I expect these systems to get much better in the next few years because the technical approaches we're taking to building them haven't been exhausted yet. The next case study I'm going to talk about is in speech. There are 2 demonstrators again. The first one is from 2017. The second one is going to be from 2023. This particular system is charmingly named Tacotron 2. It was a research group from Google that developed this system, and they demoed it as a set of examples accompanying a paper. So it's not a commercial product, although I wouldn't be surprised if some of the tech did eventually find its way into Google's hands-free systems on their mobile phones. We did test the audio earlier.
The buses aren't the problem. They actually provide a solution.
Okay. So what I'm showing you is a few examples of audio clips that are synthetic. This is a system that receives text as inputs and instruction for what words to say, and as an output, delivers an audio clip.
Does the quick brown fox jump over the lazy dog? She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure.
And so I would personally say that this is it's pretty good. It sounds quite realistic. The clips are very short, and that's really points to the fact that generating long audio clips at this time was very, very difficult, long coherent ones. But it was reasonably good. Let me now compare it, though, to a text-to-speech system from 2023, 2024, which is ChatGPT Voice. So we can hear them side by side.
We want to hear a bedtime story. Tell us a story about the super-duper sunflower hedgehog named Larry. Start with telling us a little bit about him.
Larry was a unique hedgehog unlike any other. He had bright sunflower petals instead of spines. Residing in Meadowville, Larry spread joy and color wherever he rolled. People cherished his radiant presence.
What was his house like?
Larry's house was a cozy burrow beneath a sunflower field. Inside, the walls shimmered with golden petal patterns. Natural light streamed through tiny sunflower windows, creating a warm, glowing ambiance. It was a sun-kissed haven.
Who is his best friend?
His best friend was Luna, a luminescent firefly. At night, while Larry's petals rested, Luna's glow kept them company. Their bond was special. Larry brought sunshine by day, and Luna starlight by night. Together, they illuminated Meadowville.
Okay, it's bedtime for Larry. What does he do to go to sleep?
Larry curls up in his petal blanket, letting its softness embrace him. Luna sings a gentle lullaby, her glow dimming to mimic twilight. The scent of sunflower fills the air, and Larry drifts into peaceful dreams. Good night, Larry.
Good night, Larry. So that system's ChatGPT voice. The intonation is more natural than the system that you had from 2019. These systems are also getting much better at pronouncing novel words. I think there are some flat patches in the voice there. It doesn't sound quite like, say, an audiobook reader yet. But empirically, people are using text-to-speech systems now to have documents read out to them like audiobooks or like podcasts. And I think that people weren't doing that when we had Microsoft SAM or even the systems of just 4 years ago, 5 years ago, because it was just grating. It was unpleasant to listen to. The intonation was so flat then that it just sounded monotonous and you couldn't really make sense of what was being said to you. Now the intonation is much more melodic. And that's less exhausting. It means it's easier to pass the information. And so you're seeing commercial products that are really leveraging the technology. And I should also mention that a really useful heuristic, well, not heuristic, but concept for thinking about these systems is not just to think about the absolute best capability that's available, but to think about the performance cost curve of these systems. And so this system's impressive not only because the capability is really good, the performance is really good, but also because the cost of delivering that capability is extremely low. Great. I will also actually, so I think I really find speech systems very interesting because, I mean, at the moment, so I'm going to say a few more things about this slightly self-gratuitously. There's no interruption on these systems at the moment. It is still different to talking to a person. If you were to use that, you couldn't say, talk over it, and then it would stop and listen to what you said. I expect that to change in the next few years. It's also still one-to-one, so it's only a conversation involving only 2 actors. Again, in the next few years, I think it's completely reasonable to expect that you'll start to see systems that are able to participate in conversations with multiple speakers simultaneously and delineate between who it's being addressed by. And finally, there is also still slightly noticeable latency. So it's fast, but it's not quite as fast as when you talk to a person and you immediately get a response. Or if they're not interested in what you had to say, they start talking before you've even finished. And finally, I suppose this is more just an observation on the design patterns that are used in these chat systems, whether it's writing or speech, but interaction is always initiated by the user at the moment. And that feature is one that I'll come back to later when I start talking about agentic software. All right, the talk continues. 2 case studies down, writing, visual understanding, and speech. We're not going to hear about Larry the Hedgehog again. We're going to hear about model scope. So this is a particularly, I don't know, psychotic and nightmarish example. So if you're, I don't know, you've got a weak constitution or you're easily frightened, then maybe look away. Yeah, these demos are about video generation. Video generation has just been the most, there's been the most ludicrous leap in capability in just the last year. So the first example I've got is from, well, last year, 2023. I'm going to show you a video generated by an AI system called ModelScope. This particular piece of software is what's called text-to-video software. So the user inputs a line of text saying what they want the video to be, and the software outputs a video that ideally will correspond to what the user's requested. In this particular example, the input given to the system is Will Smith eating spaghetti. Let's see what the system says back. It's going to be more unnerving without audio. I think I heard somebody say, oh, gosh. Oh. Wow. Yeah, so I would say thematically correct. Maybe some of the details could be improved. I also mentioned that this video is a montage of several repeats of the system being fed this prompt, all chained together, because these systems are only capable of generating very short clips that were very low resolution 1 year ago. Fast forward to, oh, not again, 2024. This is actually just a few weeks ago. This system is a system called Sora. It's a tech demo by OpenAI. Same type of system, receives text as input, returns a video as output. In this case, the prompt is a lot longer than Will Smith eating spaghetti. It's a movie trailer featuring the adventures of a 30-year-old spaceman wearing a red wool knitted motorcycle helmet, blue sky, salt desert, cinematic style, shot on 35mm film, vivid colors. Let's see how it looks. So we've got our spaceman, we've got blue sky, knitted motorcycle helmet largely, certainly very cinematic. I can't say whether it looks like it's shot on 35mm film, but the colors are pretty vivid. I would say pretty good. There are, if you watch it a few times, you notice that there are some inconsistencies. So there's a particular moment where a person's displayed almost on the horizon, and then this gent is front of frame briefly, and then the person on the horizon disappears. So there are still problems with coherence. And I think it's no coincidence that there are these minor problems with coherence, and OpenAI hasn't yet released this as a commercial product. It's just been a tech demo. I expect by the end of the year, this will probably feature in a commercial product. They were quite vague on how expensive it was to generate these videos, but certainly this is the most impressive text-to-video demonstration in recent memory, and it's certainly a hell of a lot better than Will Smith eating spaghetti from 1 year ago. I suppose it bears mentioning that these two examples follow the same pattern as I was talking about with the writing models, which is that ModelScope, this model was released by a group of academics, and they published the details of how they trained the model when they released all of the code necessary to reproduce their results to the public for free. Whereas OpenAI, this is proprietary research, these are trade secrets. We know not a lot about how exactly they achieve these results. So increasing capability, people become protective about their intellectual property. Great example here as well. All right. Final case study, image generation. So we've talked about writing, we've talked about speech, we've talked about Video generation. Now let's discuss image generation. So these are systems that receive as input text, so raccoons making pink cupcakes in a bakery, Wes Anderson style realistic lighting, pink. And the system returns, or should return, an image that is consistent with the text you put in. The image on the left on this slide was generated by a system called DALL-E that was released by OpenAI in 2022. And the result on the right is using a system called Midjourney and is from 2024. It's just like a mind-boggling difference. I mean, it's a very novel subject as well. I don't think there's a lot of prior art in the same genre on the internet that these models will have learned from. And yet, it works in 2024. In 2022, I suppose those look somewhat like raccoons. It was certainly very low resolution. It wasn't exactly very satisfying. I wouldn't say this is exactly in the Wes Anderson style, and I wouldn't say it's in a bakery. I'm not sure how those raccoons and cupcakes are really interacting. But then in 2024, those are certainly raccoons making pink cupcakes in a bakery with a Wes Anderson style and realistic lighting. And this has really shaken up the concept art world. So if you're a game designer, if you're a product designer, they're all using Midjourney to generate ideas or to generate concept art for their bosses. It's a commercial product. Super. I'm just going to check if there's anything else I want to say on image generation. No, I think that about covers it. So, great. I'll leave that on the slide, but I'm now going to move beyond the case studies to talk about, well, let's recap. How good is AI now? It's good enough to be assistive. It's good enough for people to genuinely be using it to search for information. In some ways, to some extent, it's displacing search engines. ChatGPT, one of the leading text generation systems, receives, I think, about 100 million active users each week. Like I say, systems like Midjourney are used in anger by professionals to generate real concept art. People pay good money for monthly subscriptions to these services. So yeah, good enough to be assistive and fuel investor optimism is how good AI is now. So this and similar software can help you create a presentation, write a document, create a website, give code suggestions, and generate concept art. But it's not transformative. And that's where we started from. It's, okay, 10 years' time, maybe we will have transformative AI. Is AI good enough to currently drive that? I would say absolutely not. I think the main reason that we're not quite there yet is because these systems are only assistive. They're not yet agentic. And so let me give you some examples of what I mean when I talk about agentic AI and agentic software. I talk about AI, I'm talking about AI and software that could run a seller's account on eBay autonomously, automatically figure out what shopping to order for you, or to organize your social calendar for you. I don't know, book you in at the Highgate Literary and Scientific Institution on Thursday, and then a dinner date on Friday, and maybe, I don't know, a visit to the theater on Saturday. And software doing all of that simply with you simply saying, could you set me up with some things to do this week? We're not there yet, though. Right, and so one of the main thrusts of my argument that we will have transformative AI within the next 10 years is that we've got this feedback loop between improvements in capability, which we've demonstrated, and investment, certainly huge volumes of money being piled into generative AI startups and big tech companies, very big mergers and acquisitions occurring on the order of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. And not only are you seeing a lot of venture capital pouring into R&D in AI, but you're also seeing these systems actually have enough value for people to pay for them, as I was saying earlier. People pay for ChatGPT, people pay for Midjourney. But it is still mostly venture capital. Great. Yeah, so a bit more about the corporate dynamics. Who is building all of these systems? Is it one company? Is it one country? Is it competing countries? No, it's competing companies, and specifically US companies. There is an intense struggle for market dominance and technological supremacy at the moment between big tech American companies, these Google DeepMind, Microsoft, Meta, previously Facebook, and notably, Apple and Amazon aren't competing in this space, and they aren't building the systems that are at the frontier of capability, like I just showed you. Apple is certainly up to something. It remains to be seen exactly what that something is. Lots of investments in AI hardware startups, but yet to see exactly how it materializes into their products. Amazon tried to compete for a while, but have gone very quiet on their innovations in AI recently. They're mostly leveraging the research being done by other organizations rather than, pushing forward the frontier of research on the most capable AI systems. And these are companies, so you've got this huge struggle, and it really is between giants. The biggest corporations by market capitalization at the moment are Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, NVIDIA, Amazon, and Meta. And so, yeah, it's the biggest companies in the world by that measure, if you choose to use it, that are piling money into AI R&D. So that's one category of companies that are building these systems. Another category is extremely well-funded startups. OpenAI, Anthropic, Mistral, Midjourney, Cohere, Runway, and 11 Labs. Runway, 11 Labs, and Midjourney are slightly different because they're more specialized in the systems they're developing. They're focusing, say, specifically on text-to-speech systems or text-to-image systems, whereas the companies that are pursuing agentic software are OpenAI, Anthropic, and that's where the really extraordinary investments in research and the most staggering and dazzling demonstrations of capability are occurring. There is I've put a note on this slide that it's not quite just American companies. There are actually not-for-profits, believe it or not, who are building frontier AI systems. And there is a huge community around researchers self-organizing to build very capable AI systems and then to share all of the details of how they were built and like the software for running them and building your own with everybody. There's not really enough time to talk about the philosophy and sort of how it's playing out, this competition between proprietary models developed by OpenAI and Anthropic and open source models that are being released by various not-for-profits, namely Elusa AI and the Allen Institute for AI, and surprisingly as well, in a big divergence of corporate strategy from the other big tech companies, Meta. Meta open source a lot of the models that they develop. So yeah, it's a very curious space in terms of competition. I can't think of many car companies that just share all of their the designs of their engines with the general public. And I suppose this is a unique strain that is quite specific to software development historically, like the idea of open sourcing. So that's who is building these systems. Who is not building state-of-the-art systems? Governments, universities, non-US organizations. Yeah, all of this R&D is centralized in the US, and I think that's very important if you contemplate like that initial statement of transformative AI within the next 10 years. Transformative AI would represent like a significant economic monopoly for a country that is host to the companies that developed it, and to, of course, those companies themselves. And I really believe that AI is a centralizing force. It results in greater attraction of resources in the future because you can compete in so many different industries for very low cost if you have the best AI, or lower cost than your competitors, more importantly. Okay. That's a bit about the corporate dynamics in Thrust 1, feedback loop between investment and advances in capability, where the investment is occurring, where the capability advances are occurring, what competitive dynamics are driving the loops. A final thing I'll say about that loop is that there really was an inflection point, a break point, a change point, whatever you want to call it, a phase transition, in November 2022, with the release of OpenAI's ChatGPT. I can remember the day that it was released because it was just the chatbot, ChatGPT, was so staggering that in the space of just a few months, the valence of the term chatbot changed entirely. It no longer referred to somebody who was like, very robotic, probably struggled to answer your question in a relevant way, perhaps associated with being rooted in circles with a telecoms company, well, I now use the term ChatGPT to compliment somebody when they can generate extraordinarily high-quality text very, very quickly. So November 2022 is a breakpoint, is a vast leap forward in performance, and it exploded researcher and investor beliefs about what was possible using existing approaches. And so the abstractions that were behind these systems and the ideas that were used to, design them hadn't changed, apart from that OpenAI had plowed a lot more compute and a lot more data into generating this one system. And that really contradicted previous beliefs about what was necessary in terms of research progress for AI capabilities to advance. People thought, there needs to be a secret sauce. We need to change how we're designing these systems in a more structural way, so different structures for the systems, rather than we just need to make the systems much bigger and put a lot more resources into them. And I think that point, I encourage you to think about its connection to this capability investment loop that I'm talking about. And another thing about ChatGPT is that it was a state-of-the-art demonstration that was consumer technology. It was almost like you were given access to a top-secret lab, except the top-secret lab turns out to be accessible to the entire world. And finally, of course, that incredible demonstration of capability triggered a firestorm of investment in generative AI companies and big tech companies. Great, so that more or less concludes the points I'm going to make to follow up on the positive feedback loop between investment and capability in AI. I'm now going to move on to talking about agentic software, which I really think is the key to unlocking transformative impact within the next decade and resulting that extraordinary growth that I mentioned before. It seems like it might be within reach. What do I mean when I say agentic software? I mean software that can execute complex, loosely specified tasks without requiring any human input besides instruction to start the task. Let me give you a concrete example, because that definition was quite abstract. So what I mean by this is software where you can ask your laptop to create and run a company. You can ask it to manage a wedding for you, direct a film, create and book your next holiday, locate an old friend, and simply saying it in those terms as well. So you just type in, same as you do if you use, say, Windows Explorer or Finder or Google. You just type in, locate, Alison Bean, my friend from high school. And the system would be good enough, this agentic software would take that information, take that task definition, and go away and try all sorts of things to locate your friend Alison Bean. And I also mentioned create and book your next holiday. So this is like the Thomas Cook agentic software. You say, I'm exhausted, I could do the holiday, could you organize a holiday for me? And maybe you approve payment, but it figures out what kind of holiday you'd probably like, suggests it to you, and then you simply say yes. And it will also do things like booking the taxi for you, booking the hotel for you, booking any excursions you're going to go on, maybe even getting in touch with your friends and saying, wouldn't you like to come with me? Cool. So that's what I mean by agentic software. And it seems like it may be within reach. Why is this? Language and visual understanding skills are getting really good, and the improvement on them is fast, as I showed you previously with Claude, the system where I uploaded the image and then asked it to describe it. And a really simple observation here is that good enough language and visual understanding skills are enough for an agent to interact with people and to operate a computer. These are universal interfaces, vision and language. And finally, this is a point I've mentioned a few times already. current technical approaches seemingly have large untapped potential. There is more data to use. There are more computers that we can build. We just need more investment to get it and build them. And so to close the loop on the point of the second thrust, it's an interesting mixed metaphor. Agentic software will make it very cheap to provide many services. Could be enough to drive that plus 30% growth in global world product I mentioned before. And agentic software would also include self-improving AI. So you have software that can build AI and that can improve AI. And so you have self-improving AI, your agentic software just gets much better. Maybe you end up with software that is capable of making technological innovations in other fields. So perhaps quickly after developing agentic software and self-improving AI, you end up with other really transformative technologies such as nuclear fusion or advances in materials engineering. And that would lead to massive growth globally. It would certainly lead to a lot of abundance if the possible chaos that ensued didn't result in things going horribly wrong in the interim. Fantastic. Okay. Transformative AI within the next 10 years. It could happen. I think the key forces driving this are those two positive feedback loops. One, between investment and capability, and two, between, the fact that we're nearly perhaps at agentic software. It hasn't exactly been a very intellectual argument that I've made to you. I've shown you a snapshot of capability now. I've shown you a snapshot of capability from a few years ago. I've asked you to make your best guess at the speed. I haven't said anything about whether it's accelerating. Many people argue that it is. I think that's quite difficult to measure, like what's your choice of metric? And so I won't give an answer to that now. I think, well, no, I'm not going to give an answer to it now, I just said. What milestones to watch out for next? So if you want to continue monitoring the speed of innovation in AI over the next few years, what sort of key points could you look out for? Referencing some of the demonstrations I showed you this evening, you could have video generation in commercial products, whether it's in TikTok, whether it's in Google or Bing. We'll have commercial AI that understands video pretty soon as well, I think. So this is, I don't know, I'm not sure if many of you have seen it, but there's a hardware startup that is trying to create the next mobile phone. Their proposal is that it's a camera that you stick to your lapel or you put in your front pocket, and it records the world around you, and it makes inferences about what sort of information will be useful to you. It has a microphone built in as well, so that you can address it and it can speak back to you. I don't know what the really groundbreaking consumer product idea is for AI that understands video quite yet, where we'll see it materialize. A really significant milestone will be when we have AI-first operating systems, particularly if we make the jump to agentic software. Maybe Windows 12 or the next version of macOS will have a button where you press it and type in what you want it to do, and it goes away and just buys that thing that you want. It does research for a product for you and buys it, or it does some abstract task like, I don't know, organizing the data on your computer so that it's no longer a mess and all on your desktop. Those are pretty boring examples, but I'm sure you can use your imagination. I also think we'll see big innovation in human-computer interaction probably in the next few years. What that will look like exactly remains to be seen. I don't think it will be the lapel computer. It will probably be something else. I'm not sure if you come across Neuralink, which is chips inserted into the brain to allow people to control computers. Seems quite extreme, but if you have non-invasive versions of that, then, I can guarantee you that a lot of the critical functionality of that product will be heavily reliant on advances in AI. And another key marker will be AI-generated content flooding the web, particularly this year. It's an extraordinary year. It's an election year. I think it's something like 64 elections globally this year. You're already starting to see deepfakes and text content flooding the web that is just generated by these systems. It's not been written by a person. It's not a real photograph. And that's going to get a lot worse. It's also going to happen in lots of legitimate ways too. You know, you're going to see news articles that are written entirely by AI. Lots of the images that you encounter on the web may well be generated by AI. And I also encourage you to study what occupations are being automated. Are people actually not doing the work that they did 10 years ago or today in 5 years' time? Great. I have got some counter-arguments here to that proposition we'll have transformative AI within the next 10 years. What are the two main ones? One is that we won't get agentic software. This is quite plausible. We haven't seen a really compelling consumer product demonstration of agentic software yet. And we could just be getting excited over tech demos and all of these improvements in assistive AI. The big labs, the big tech companies, and these really well-funded AI startups are definitely working on this really hard. They really want to make agentic software, but they haven't even come out with a compelling tech demo yet. And this may suggest that the problem is harder than we think, and we are actually getting excited over tech demos, and a significant conceptual leap is necessary to get to good agentic software. But this is something that we can track progress on. This is something actually that the AI Safety Institute does. We build tools for tracking the capability of AI systems on specific tasks, including agentic tasks, so executing these long sequences of actions in pursuit of a loosely defined goal. So that's argument one. Maybe we won't get agentic software in the next 10 years, so we won't see transformative impact. Counter-argument two is that agentic software won't even have much impact. We do get there, but it won't have much impact. The way things are has a lot of inertia. I suppose just as I say that, I think that the perceptions of this audience about the inertia of how things are and how much it's changed over the last 70, 80, 90 years, I'd be very curious to know your takes on that, because I think perhaps from your perspective, there isn't a lot of inertia and that things are changing more and more quickly. I'm only 28. I don't think I have quite as good a sense of what really rapid change looks like because I've just been used to it. There's also the possibility that people simply decide to reject things like agentic software, and they conclude, culturally, ethically, this isn't the sort of world that I would like to live in, and so our democratic institutions represent all of the people, and AI is regulated or development is paused, so we don't get to a point where you have these really wild and perhaps worst case scenario, very destabilizing technologies built at all. But if we do build, I say here, over a longer period, I would still expect a lot of change if we do get to agentic software. So maybe change will just happen more slowly. So it won't be in a single year that you have really big growth. It will just materialize much more gradually. Although I do note that the internet didn't have a huge impact on global productivity, even though I think in the abstract you would expect it to. Okay, let's wrap up. I gave you a snapshot of AI now with motion blur. To provide a slightly better, but still crude measurement of how quickly the AI capability ceiling is rising above us. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Jim, for inviting me this evening. Let's move on to the Q&A. Are there any questions?
If you could raise your hand for a question.
Jerome, thank you for a most interesting talk. I wonder if you could give us a couple of examples of where AI is already in use and making a dramatic difference to some process or other.
It's a good question. I'm trying to think of the most dramatic example. I think possibly the most disruptive example that comes to mind is in the text-to-image generation software I mentioned before. So I know among graphic designers and web designers, and even among programmers as well, not for image generation, but for code generation, all of them are using these AI systems assistively day to day. They pay the monthly subscription fee of $10, $20 a month. And in return, what they get is the ability to generate really high quality imagery very quickly in like novel topics, or a coding assistant that dramatically increases their productivity. So those are the ones that come to mind. I don't feel totally satisfied with that answer, but yeah, that's what I have to hand.
Thanks very much. Interesting talk. I had a quick look at your organisation's website.
Yeah.
And in the definitions section, I was disappointed to see phrases like the software understands and the software recognises links between data and questions and things like that.
Yeah.
Would you not agree that all we're talking about here is applied statistics? There is no intelligence or understanding.
Yeah.
It is, as someone said last year, just a stochastic parrot.
A stochastic parrot, a blurry JPEG of the web. Yeah, I suppose I should first clarify that my beliefs are not coincident with AISI's, and AISI's aren't coincident with mine, and I'm speaking here in a private capacity. I probably wouldn't use the word, well, I think understanding, creativity, consciousness are all like fraught topics or fraught terms to use, and they sort of invite challenge. I think what is more useful is to focus on the fact that these systems can legitimately execute useful tasks, right? So if you give me a strict definition of understanding, then I can give you a good answer, I think, an answer I'd stand by. I would say that if your definition of understanding is the ability to execute tasks in a given domain, and that's like sufficient demonstration of understanding of that domain, then yes, these systems do have understanding. I'd be curious to hear your definition of understanding, though.
And just say, I don't know what.
Well, you could just say software as well.
Expert systems?
So it's interesting that you say that, because originally I was going to do a lot more on the history of AI here and talk about how like the underlying concepts, competitive dynamics have changed over the years, and expert systems would have featured. I think what we have today is, it's closer to understanding than an expert system, because it's not simply applying like strict logic. It's exploiting statistical correlations that result in things that do resemble understanding a lot more than you would get if you were to use one of the expert systems from the 1980s. A good question, though. A good question. Any others at the back?
So you're from an AI Safety Institute, right?
Yes, yeah.
How worried are you? I mean, this technology is advancing so quickly. It's pretty clear that governments and legislators putting out fires, really struggling to keep up. How kind of concerned are you? What are you guys doing? Because I'm not really seeing many kind of really significant policy changes or anything.
Yeah, that's a really good challenge. You are completely correct. There is not yet frontier AI regulation in the UK for these systems. There is in the EU. So the EU AI Act passed just last week, and that does have pretty material consequences for the way that AI is developed and deployed in the EU. The US has yet to pass regulation as well. So your original question, I know I'm actually talking about regulation now, and I should be answering your question, which is how worried am I? I'm not worried about current capabilities. I've seen the experimental data on the risk from these systems being misused, and I'm not concerned about it. Just across all different domains, whether it's chembio, cyber, these agentic system risks, just there's no reason for concern at the moment. I think the concern I have is that technology seems to be advancing very quickly, and it's advancing in ways that are quite unpredictable as well. And the consequences that you could have if the systems get a lot better very quickly are so dire, it's still worth mitigating them. So I suppose I'd frame it as very unlikely, but bad enough that it's worth worrying about, is primarily what motivates my personal work on this topic. And I'd also say, so there is also a legitimate big category of risks which are, they're not absolutely catastrophic, as in everybody gets wiped out by a pathogen or by a really bad chemical weapon. But disinformation, coercion, impacts on people's mental health, that materially increases people's suffering. And so I think that, that's something to worry a bit more about now. We've seen the impact of, a very light touch approach to social media regulation in the last 10 years, and I think we can probably do a bit better this time. So yes, we don't have regulation yet. I would certainly say that you should expect regulation within the next couple of years in the UK, and people are thinking about it, and certainly the AI Safety Institute is using its testing of these systems to inform the regulation that will be put in place. A really good question, though.
Yes, I'm not going to say open AI, I'm going to say open lie. AI has proved to be mendacious and very such that Boris Johnson would be really proud. What are you doing about AI's mendacity?
Mendacity,
not you personally, but what's being done.
So when you say mendacious AI, are you talking about systems that inadvertently generate fabrications or systems that are intentionally used to generate fabrications?
No, inadvertently or deliberately would assume consciousness on AI.
I was actually referring to the user.
That is a whole subject. Factually mendacious, shall we say.
Factually mendacious. The AI Safety Institute only tests the veracity of these systems insofar as are they giving correct information on how to build bombs and chemical weapons and similar things. It's not concerned with veracity in a broad sense of is it giving you correct information about elections? That's probably not a great example, but is it giving you correct information about what the weather is today, or I don't know, how to build a bookshelf? I think the commercial incentives of the companies building these are such that they don't want it to generate hallucinations and to lie. They want it to recognize where it doesn't have sufficiently good information to give you a high quality answer, and simply to say, provide an output that says, I'm sorry, I don't have quite enough information to answer that question. Perhaps you could try these things instead. So AI Safety Institute isn't really doing anything on mendacity. I think that the big tech companies and startups building these systems, I know that they definitely are.
Let's put it another way. It's been inventive.
Inventive, yeah. So hallucinations are still certainly a problem. You've seen a lot of progress on them in the last few years, though. So even since the release of ChatGPT, the problem of hallucinations has improved considerably. But I'd still certainly say that this is a pertinent concern for corporations that are considering deploying these systems for themselves, because you have seen examples of, company X deploys a large language model to answer customer queries, and then it ends up committing the company to doing something that is just totally inconsistent with its policy, and then the customer taking that company to court and actually winning because, this system is proved as a representative of the company, and it said this thing, and so the customer rightfully, in some ways, expects that it should receive the product. At least the policy or the usage policy in that case was such that the customer won. So that's all I really have to say on hallucinations is that then they're getting less bad. Johnny.
Hi. Well, thank you for the talk, first of all.
Very welcome.
One thing that I would be interested to hear your opinion on is that you mentioned the competition between the US companies, and you also mentioned coming regulation in answer to that previous question. And that sort of seems good in the sense that, it's all these nice American companies competing and we're going to regulate it. But how do we balance that against the CCP developing AI?
I think, so this is a wonderful question, because you've struck at the heart of something that really concerns me, which is regulating these companies could be against the national security interests of the United States. They want to have the most capable technology domestically, so that if there's a conflict, then they have the better technology. And so that's a pressure against them regulating. And my answer is, yeah, that is a real like tension between, on the one hand, you want to create like an equitable society and you don't want to have monopolies or oligopolies in your markets. But then on the other, you have an arms race with other countries that are potentially you're going to be in conflict with, or you could be in conflict with in the next couple of decades. Yeah, a really good point.
Is there a notion of like how far ahead these American companies are of the rest of the world? Like, do we think it's not going to be a problem, or?
At the moment, you have a low regulation environment. The American companies are streets ahead. Pretty much all of the major advances, all of the frontier systems are built by American companies. I think if you had regulation, that could certainly change. I think that GDPR probably did hamper European efforts at developing AI because you require vast amounts of data to train these systems. Now, don't get me wrong, it certainly had benefits for people's privacy and like their rights to know and approve of how their data is being used. But I would perhaps point to that as an example of how regulation can materially affect technological advancement within a very short space of time. And perhaps it will be the same with the EU AI Act, whatever comes out of the US executive order on AI in the way of regulation. But the signs at the moment are that the US is not going to take a very aggressive approach to regulating these companies, and I'm certain that the national security concerns we talked about are a part of that. Question in the back?
Thank you. A couple of questions. First, do you think there is a room for cooperation in the current world between, say, US, Europe, Russia, China? Is it possible to make global alignment between all these players?
Yeah, it's certainly desirable. This is like the classic way of diffusing an arms race, is to have a treaty. That means people agree to the way that they're going to do development of technology that could be destabilizing. Current climate is going to be very challenging. US-China relations are in a horrible place. Russia-US relations are even worse. That being said, China did attend the Global AI Safety Summit run by the AI Task Force, now the AI Safety Institute, in November last year. They did agree, they were a signatory on the Bletchley Agreement, which lays out, essentially, it's a country or a company declaring it recognizes that AI will have risks as well as benefits and commits to trying to mitigate those in the public interest. The risks, that is, not the benefits. And so I think there are reasons for optimism, actually, in spite of the things that are, in spite of the fact that things are a bit frosty in other areas. I think on AI safety, there are glimmers of hope, and you'll see. I think if you want to watch whether things are getting bad or getting worse or better, you can watch for the outcomes from the Korean and French AI safety summits later this year and see, does China attend? I suspect Russia probably won't attend. But certainly when it comes to the really severe risks from AI, like the really high impact ones, it's in everybody's interest to mitigate those. And I think, certainly Chinese leaders, academics recognize that, as well as our own researchers do, and probably do want to collaborate internationally to diffuse development of dangerous AI. Yeah.
And the second question, do you personally or as an institute consider existential risk as important on any reasonable time scale, say 20 years, 50 years?
We don't have an organizational position on this. Many of the staff in the AI Safety Institute are keenly concerned about existential risks from AI, hence that's the driving motivation for their work. I would say I actually don't have a concrete answer myself on when I think what the profile of existential risk looks like from AI. I'm not somebody that, I've just made a load of arguments saying they'll be transformative within the next 10 years. And I think that will be perhaps very destabilizing. So maybe I'm saying I think there's a 5 or 10% chance in the next 50 years of something really horrible happening. So you teased it out of me. Personally, like I say, AISI doesn't have a position on that. But, thank you for your questions.
One final question? Right.
The thing that really bothers me is Putin and the American governments each asking their AI systems what the opponent, as it were, the other side, is telling their leaders they think we are going to do. What Putin is asking the AI system, what does the American government think I'm about to do? And these opposing AI things are each going to be trying to assess what the other AI system is doing. Yeah. And it's getting a complete vicious circle and tangle. And you can't, these controls are not going to control what the government is doing with its own AI systems.
Yeah, I think the locus of innovation is commercial. You know, it's companies that are building these, and they're certainly not defense companies first. And I'd be very surprised if it were the case that, say, OpenAI or Google DeepMind were sharing their models with, say, the US military. But it's definitely the case that, say, the US military or like NATO militaries, well, just militaries generally, are trying to use similar systems to deliver command and control or deliver like autonomous weapons. And there is the risk that we end up in a place where the battlefield's so heavily automated that you do end up with escalation risks where there's no human intervention. I mean, and there's not really any substantial legislation surrounding lethal autonomous weapon systems yet, or how they'll be incorporated. And I would also say, you know, like military technology is quite murky, and legislative caveats do exist as well. So I share your concern. I would love to see more campaigners, lawyers thinking about problems of like legislating and delivering treaties on autonomous systems, particularly those that are integrated into command and control, so that we avoid, say, like an escalation risk like you outlined. Any other questions?
Well, Jerome, thank you so much for coming along and giving us such a tremendous insight into the current state of AI and the risks involved, and for dealing with the questions so competently. I have in the back of my mind, really, because I was part of the experiment at the time, the end of the Cold War, when at the end of the 90s, the Soviet Union sent its people around to the computer shops in the West and in the States and in Europe to buy up PCs. And the thinking in the Soviet Union was, if the general computers on sale to the public are this good, what must the military ones be like? We shan't be so lucky the next time, I fear. But that was a very interesting talk, and I'm sure it's given us lots of pause for thought. And it'll be the start, I feel, of a number of talks which I hope to set up with AI in specific fields, maybe in medicine, maybe you talked about climate change, maybe in meteorology is another area where AI is going to make a big difference. But the next talk will be on a different existential threat to humanity. Normally I avoid green issues as they tend to be rather more political than scientific. But there is one aspect of the green debate which has become much more scientific, and that's geoengineering, where we're trying now to do something about climate change. When Al Gore first stated the problem, he said that all the Arctic ice would be gone by the year 2000. And then in the year 2000, all the Arctic ice will be gone by 2020. Well, we now know that particularly this year, there's more Arctic ice than ever before. And as part of geoengineering, what we're talking about doing is spraying water onto that ice so we get even more ice, and it reflects back some of the sun's heating rays from a particular area. That and other aspects of the problem can be tackled on a very large scale, and it will be exciting to see how these projects are bearing out. I doubt whether I'll get the talk on geoengineering for April. Easter eats up too much there, but towards the end of May, I should certainly have a geoengineer coming along to give you the latest on this particular technology. Thank you so much.
Henry can give you great recommendations for Geoengineer Connects, so I encourage you to talk to him afterwards.
Good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.